Dr. Lauren Sparks. I'm a doctorally trained nurse practitioner. I'm also a therapist. Most importantly, I've walked through the fire of erythromelalgia as well as chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I'm here to tell you I have hope for your healing, lots of it. Today I want to talk about Shoemaker protocol step number 2, which is introduction of a bile acid sequestrant, fancy name for a binder. When we think about binders in the context of CIRS, let's think about why we need a binder. So we've or are earnestly working on step 1 of the Shoemaker protocol, which is removal from exposure. And now we want to introduce a binder to bind and remove toxin. We want to put that binder into the body. We then want a good dump of bile into the gut so that the toxin can be bound and removed. We remove the toxin each time we have a bowel movement, as strange as it sounds. So when we think about binding, many people would like to go the natural route versus using a pharmaceutical binder. The two evidence-based binders that Dr. Shoemaker supports are cholestyramine as well as clocevilam or Welchol. The prescription binders are something I resisted a bit when I initially found the Shoemaker protocol. I had begun to have some negative experiences with prescription medications, and I was quite worried about side effects. You should note that side effects are pretty uncommon. The side effect that we often expect is constipation, although it does not happen with everyone. There can also be some acid reflux that occurs, but the binder is binding and removing and not adding to the body. So we do not expect to see an excessive amount of side effects like we can see with some other medications. But why wouldn't you use charcoal or silica or something more natural? Well, I tried this. I tried this for probably a period of 6 months, and it was not effective. I felt maybe 5% better. And now I understand that it doesn't have the appropriate charge to bind and remove mycotoxins themselves. So there is a place for charcoal. It's carried on ambulances. I don't want to poo-poo anything. I think there's a place for almost everything, but we aren't binding and removing mycotoxins with charcoal or silica or other natural binders. Now, you will find that some Shoemaker providers do use okra occasionally. And that is because there is an appropriate charge, but it is a much slower process. And so if we can use a prescription binder to expedite the process, you have suffered a long time. Why elongate that suffering? I would really encourage you to use that prescription evidence-based binder to bind and remove the toxin from the body. We need consistency with any binder. If you're just binding once daily, it's unlikely to be effective. And this is hard because we are experiencing brain fog. Our diet can often be very limited. And so it can be really frustrating to learn I need to bind, 3, even 4 times daily with cholestyramine. But I tell people every time you're binding, you are winning the battle. And so set alarms, try to set up a schedule that works for you. And many people will wrap their head around, cholestyramine is a stronger binder and therefore I really need to use cholestyramine. But maybe they work and it is very hard to take in the cholestyramine and wait the 30 minutes before they take in at least 7 grams of fat. The most effective medication is the one that you can take and that you do tolerate. And so if you need to use clocevilam or Welchol, it's a very effective binder, and I would encourage you to use that. It is easier to take because you can take it at the same time that you take in your fat. Why do you need to take in fat with a binder? You want the fat because you want that good bile dump into the gut so the binder can bind with the bile and so that, again, you can continue to have bowel movements and poop out that toxin. That fat gives you that good bile dump. We want you to be having a daily bowel movement when you are on your binder. If you are not having a daily bowel movement, you are reabsorbing that toxin. And this can be hard because many of our patients have been given diagnosis of constipation or IBS, and this is often secondary to the chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So we really have to bind and remove the toxin in order to get movement with the constipation, but the binder can cause constipation. So sometimes we feel like a dog chasing our tail, but we have many, many tricks up our sleeve. We often start with the use of magnesium in order to promote that motility. We can also offer some support to thicken up that stool, some fibrous support. Some people have benefited from ginger. If you are having issues having a regular bowel movement, I want you to talk to your provider or your coach to figure out how you can induce a daily bowel movement without distress and straining and stressing about it itself. We should find the right mix of things where you're consistently having an easy enough daily bowel movement while you're binding. The last thing I want to talk about is the potential for an intensification reaction. When we are binding, if we are binding and we are pulling too much toxin too quickly and the body just isn't really able to keep up, it can create an intensification reaction. So if we are binding and let's say we started low, we've gone slow, we've bumped up as our provider has instructed us to, and all of a sudden we notice that we have new onset symptoms or we have some worsening of symptoms, the severity of our symptoms are worse, then I would really encourage you to back off of the binder, take a full 2 days off from your binding altogether. This sort of gives the body a chance to catch up. You'll return to baseline. And then I encourage patients to start at the last dose at which they were not having any sort of intensification reaction. I will say from my own experience, I've thrown myself into an intensification reaction twice. And for me, that shows up as feeling incredibly fatigued. I thought I had been hit by a bus, but now I've been run over by the bus. I would have dark mood, which was not something that was usually present for me, dark thoughts. And even though nothing had changed in my life, I was just done with all of this. I would also experience like heavy limbs. It felt like I was moving through quicksand. I find intensification reactions can really vary dramatically, so you have to pay attention to your own body and really do pay attention, especially in the first few days when you're bumping up to a new dose, to make sure that if you are having an intensification reaction that you catch it quickly. Oftentimes our loved ones will be the first to notice that our mood takes a nosedive, and so it can be nice to have loved ones aware that we are bumping up the binder, and they can give us feedback if they think that we potentially are suffering from an intensification reaction. As a former marathoner, I can sometimes have the idea like just push through. Don't push through an intensification reaction. You do not have to feel worse to feel better. I actually feel like it's a stress on the body that could be certainly not beneficial and could cause harm. And so I would encourage you to respect the body. The body is giving you good feedback that this dose is not appropriate right now. Back off of that dose. It doesn't mean that you won't ever be appropriate. I tell patients to hang out for a month or so and then consider trying to increase the dose again. If you're benefiting from this channel, please like and subscribe. What has your experience been with binding? Do you have a love for cholestyramine, cholcevilam? Have you benefited from the use of okra? What questions do you have about binding? I would love for you to leave a question in the comments so that I can create a video specific to your question. And until next time, happy binding, take good care, and hold on to hope.